7 o'clock, Your Worship.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll bring this regular council meeting to order, Monday, June the 7th, 2021. And to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Stahelis, and the next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to number 2, Your Worship, introduction of late items. Do you have any late items?
Have no late items. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get going on the approval of the agenda, I just want to draw council's attention to page 3 of the agenda face under reports. Just a clerical error, should read B and C, not A. And also on page 8, it should read opposed. Apologize for those errors, Your Worship. Do I have approval of the agenda then, please? Your Worship, we'll move on to number 4, adoption of council minutes. We have the regular council meeting minutes of May 17, 2021 here for adoption. Your Worship, your microphone.
Moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Anybody opposed? No, thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to the next set of minutes. We have the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of May 28, 2021, also here for adoption.
And we have moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favour? Nobody opposed? Thank you.
No, I am.
Oh,
I'm opposed.
oh, Councillor Palmer is opposed?
Yes.
Opposed. Thank you. And the next order of business, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item. That is business arising from the minutes.
Business from councillors arising from the minutes? Being none, we'll move on, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6. That's on the consent agenda. We have one bylaw, council procedure bylaw number 1164/2021. And we have a couple items under correspondence, a letter dated May 11, 2021 from the District of Tofino regarding support for expedient and resourced implementation of the Old Growth Strategic Review. And we have a letter dated May 18, 2021 from the City of White Rock, Office of the Mayor, regarding regional model mobile crisis response car program and invoicing for required officer attendance at hospitals in accordance with the Mental Health Act. We also have a letter dated May 19, 2021 from the Union of BC Municipalities regarding 2021 LMLGA resolution. We have a letter dated May 21st, 2021 from the Union of BC Municipalities regarding the gas tax agreement community works fund payment. And we have an email dated June 2nd, 2021 from the City of Prince George regarding the 2021 UBCM convention resolutions. The bylaw is here for adoption, Your Worship, and the correspondence here for receipt. No, so this consent agenda items.
So do we have a move of the consent agenda items moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Piper? Call the question. All in favour? Anybody opposed? Nobody opposed?
Opposed to the items on the consent agenda?
Opposed to the items? Anybody was opposed? No? Yes, Councillor Hooper. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to, there are no delegations or petitions, so we'll move on to number 8, correspondence. We have letters dated May 25th, 2021 from the Office of the Premier and Minister Osborne regarding the 2021 UBCM convention and the provincial appointment book. Here for receipt, Your Worship.
Receipt. Do we have a mover and a seconder for the correspondence? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Call the question. All in favour? Anybody opposed? No? No? Okay, thank you. That passes. Next order, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 9. Any business arising from that correspondence?
Business from councillors arising from the correspondence? None? Okay, no business. Move on, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 10. This is reports of councilors, committees, committee of the whole, and commissions.
Councillor Hooper, please.
Yes, good evening. On the 21st and 26th of May, I attended the Zoom meetings and training with the CNIB. 18th of May, I attended a Zoom meeting with members of the BCCRN on the Métis people of BC. On the 18th of May, I also took part in the Taramac Institute's Zoom meeting and training on the impact of racism and how it leads to poverty. On the 19th of May, I attended the community-to-community meeting. 25th of May, I attended a Zoom meeting with the LGBTQ2 community on June being the Pride Month and how COVID has affected COVID-19's effect on their community. On the 27th of May, I attended a Zoom meeting with YAKE on the lack of real drug education in schools as part of Fraser Health and the Foundry. On the 28th of May, I attended the Committee of the Whole. Again, on the 28th of May, I attended the outdoor AGM meeting for the Agassiz Harrison Historical Society. And on the 2nd of June, I attended a special Zoom meeting and training with the CNIB. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Palmer.
Since our last council meeting, I've attended the Fraser Valley Regional Library Board, and later this month we've got a full-day retreat, and a lot of it is focused on how the library will continue to reopen, expand its reopenings as COVID hopefully retreats. And I also attended the C2C forum, and of course the Committee of the Whole of Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 19th, I attended the Lettsmont Community to Community Forum, where we had the honor of Regional Chief Terry TG from the Assembly of First Nations BC attend for the duration of the meeting. Regional Chief TG advocates on behalf of the nearly 204 First Nations in BC on their rights and treaty issues in their respective territories. On May 20th and June 4th, I attended a Canada Day planning meeting. The theme for this year is Everyday Canadian Heroes, specifically focusing on our essential workers. As we hopefully celebrate for the last time online this year, there's going to be a lot of excellent entertainment, a virtual pet parade, toolkits that are going to be just loaded with goodies, including paint kits for the kiddos for the online paint workshop. And also there will be a house decorating contest that if you wish to participate, please register by visiting tourismharrison.com. And when you're on the new website, just look for the Harrison Canada Day section and get registered. And I believe you also have to register for the gift bags. So take a look and check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun for our last virtual. Hopefully. On May 26th, I attended the Harrison Tourism Society Board of Directors meeting. The visitor center is now open with COVID rules in place. And I know a few meetings ago I was asked in regards to the AGM, and it is now scheduled for June 23rd at 4 p.m. I'm just waiting to learn if that will be in person or online, because at that date, it was a little unsure if in-person would be permitted. So I will update if I can before then. May 28th, I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting, and on June 3rd, I attended the Kent Harrison Joint Emergency Program Committee meeting. Thank you, Your Worship. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 19th, I also attended the Lettsmont Community to Community Forum, and as Councillor Piper indicated, it was indeed an honor to have Chief Terry TT attend our meeting and address our attendees. On May 20th, I attended the Agassiz Harrison Healthy Communities meeting. And one of the highlights from that meeting was the stats have shown that Agassiz and Harrison are in the top 3 in all of Fraser Health for vaccination numbers. So way to go, Harrison and Agassiz. And on May 28th, I also attended our council committee of the whole meeting. And that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to number 11, and this is reports from the mayor.
Thank you. Where are we here? Well, Council has already mentioned about the Let's Smart meeting that we recently had with Regional Chief Terry Teege. Did a very good presentation for us there. Tara McNeil did mention that the C2C is very successful, and many communities who would like to have this, like the type of C2C group that we have to move on. The flood management strategy was discussed in regards to training with the First Nations and emergency training on that score, and just general discussion on the ongoing flood management and gravel removal. The Let's Smart in the discussions with Jamie Benson from the Fraser Valley Regional District, there's 146 reserves in the regional district out of part of the 331,000 people that we have in our district. 32% is general garbage, 38% is recycle, and 30% is food. bewaste.com is the that came to the regional district over a year ago in trying to reduce the waste of food. 35 million tons of food is wasted in Canada. And food mesh was introduced by the Fraser Valley Regional District. Food rescued was 1,136,000 tons. 1,481,850 meals were provided. Just shows you through preserving the waste of food, how much can be saved and how many other people can be fed. So that was on that portion. Out of interest, those who may have seen the news yesterday, when I say that in our little community, our village, we appear to be ahead of a lot of places, and we're very fortunate with that. In Shuswap, the search and rescue, marine search and rescue, have now installed life rings for safety in that area. And of course, as you know, we're well ahead of that game with having ours installed on the beach. So that's good that they're doing that, because in that area they have about eight drowning deaths every year. So that's unfortunate, and we're all trying to do our best to not have anybody get drowned. On Saturday the 5th, past Saturday, councillors Viola, Piper, Palmer, and myself, and a dog, and his daughter, greeted the 2021 Grads Parade through the village. Councillor Piper made up some nice placards that we all stood there and held up, and we got a lot of horn blowing, and also it was advertised on our digital board. Congratulations to the grad class of 2021, and I want to thank the staff for putting that up on our digital board. The family Division of Family Practice of May the 26th was a lot of areas that were covered, from primary care to this is of interest. In primary care, there's going to be a 13 square foot facility on Evans Road for a hub of allied health and primary care, designed with purpose and function, with welcoming nature to both non-Indigenous and Indigenous patients. Inclusion of Indigenous artwork and ground blessing for the building that took place to begin the work in a good way. So that's moving ahead there, and they're looking for recruitment to help out with that place. So that's a good place. Municipality and community dialogue, that was discussed. Division dialogue, hospital care program, that was discussed. And long term, these are ongoing discussions, as you'll very well know. I bring up now and again from those meetings. In regards to the terrible tragedy in Kamloops, the Let's Smart C2C put out a letter. Let's Smart C2C extend our support and condolences to the family, nations, and Indian residential school survivors who were impacted by the confirmation of the burial site of 215 undocumented children at the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian residential school. So that went out with a signature of the 5 First Nations and District of Kent and myself. On our behalf, the Agassiz Harrison Community Services has just put out their latest strategic plan. And of course, this is a very well organized group, and the areas of programs that they have here is just, I don't know how they managed to do it, but it's a very worthwhile group of people who are trying to help as many people as they can in our community in many ways. So if you need help, follow up with your community services. Emergency planning meeting on the 3rd of June. The Fraser River at Hope was 1 to 10 year return with 12,300 cubic meters per second. That was going to happen on Sunday up to Monday. The higher levels were indicated in 2012 and 2018. Harrison Lake was lower at 11.3. It's going to peak on Sunday at 12 and should start trending down. No issues at the moment, as stated by our provincial emergency coordinator. Harrison Mills, as usual, there could be possible flooding there, and they're on that just in case. The levels will be checked daily if required. And at the Kent Municipal Gravel Pit, there's 36,000 sandbags. And also on Friday, there was a meeting with our Minister, Josie Osborne, and Dr. Brian Emerson. BC, as indicated today on the news, is at 72% with the first shots. There's going to be amendments to the restart for meetings, and that's coming forward. Our staff are waiting for that. I brought up the question of the hotel group bookings that are still suffering, and Dr. Emerson stated that more relaxing measures, depending on stats, would be coming in later in the year. So hopefully we keep our fingers crossed for the hotels. I mentioned the Mayor's Challenge, and in regards to the Mayor's Challenge, just let me pull this up for you. Give me a second here. Okay, that's wrong one. Just hang on a minute. I'm going to read this out. Mayor's Challenge. There we go. Congratulations to all Fraser Health communities for the excellent progress across the region. Communities that achieved 75% this week, the Pitt Meadows, New Westminster, Port Moody, Anmore, Belcarra, Delta, White Rock. Communities that achieved 70% this week, Burnaby, Township of Langley. There are several close races underway. Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam are racing to 75%. Almost at the finish line. Maple Ridge is well positioned. The race to 70% with the city of Langley, Abbotsford, Agassiz, Harrison right behind them. So come on, folks, let's get on the bandwagon here. Hope Chilliwack and Mission are making strong progress with all 3 communities achieving a 2% gain since the last update. So that's the latest as of this evening. It came through from Fraser Health, and on the last week, I also had the pleasure on your behalf, Council, that I congratulated, brought a welcome speech to the graduating class of 2021 at the high school, did a video for them, and wished them all the very best. Moving forward, of course, it was a difficult year for everybody, but they seem to have got through it, and God bless them all. And last but not least, in regards to the Mayor's Challenge, this is the community. This is what went out to the website. Is that right? Mayor's Challenge? What? Yes, thank you. The Village Harrison Hot Springs has joined a friendly community challenge to encourage residents to get immunized and be the first community in the Fraser Health region to achieve herd immunity. Harrison Hot Springs is in a unique situation. As a result, community vaccines will help protect us, our neighbors, our visitors who support our businesses. I believe our residents are up to this challenge. Currently, we're ahead of the game. There is average rate vaccination in the region at 60, but 80% of our population over 55 in Harrison Hot Springs and Agassiz have received their first shots. Age 12 and up are eligible to register to get their vaccine. To follow our standing, you can go to BC COVID-19 surveillance dashboard on the BC CDC website. We work hard to have a local vaccine clinic and to keep it close by. We need to be using it. Vaccine clinic is set up every Wednesday at the Agriculture Hall in Agassiz. Pre-registration is required. You can do that online at getvaccinated.gov.bc.ca or by calling 833-838-2323. With every vaccine, we're helping our friends, family, and local businesses put this pandemic in the rearview mirror. I know we care about each other here in Harrison. This is our opportunity to show it. Let's continue to hold the line against this virus and all get our vaccines as soon as possible. And that's the latest from yours truly. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 12, and this is reports from staff. The first report is from the Community Services Manager regarding village wayfinding signs.
Shell?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff has identified that there's a gap in visitor wayfinding signage within the village signage plan. Wayfinding signage is specific to tourism. It directs visitors to amenities, businesses, and attractions within the village. The attached concept shown in Appendix A has been created in accordance with the objectives of the signage plan, which includes identity, communication, creating positive experiences, fiscal responsibility, and public safety. Staff is recommending that the first installation of tourism wayfinding signage be at the corner of Esplanade Avenue and St. Alice Street. Because this is a partnership project with Tourism Harrison, Harrison Agassiz Chamber of Commerce, Community Futures North Fraser, and the village, there are no financial implications to us at this time. The recommendation is that the wayfinding signage installation at Esplanade Avenue and St. Alice Street be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation. We have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. And I'll go around the table here. We'll start off with Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. From the materials, it looks like the sign will go on the northeast corner. In other words, the corner where the new building is being constructed. Is that correct, Rhonda?
Yes.
Okay. And it seems fine. It's a very good place to put a sign. I think it makes sense. No financial implications. Does the village even install it, or is it being installed by a third-party contractor?
It will be installed by a third-party contractor. The project will be managed by Tourism Harrison.
Thank you. Thank you. No other questions. I'm fine.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that area was identified several, Councillor Piper might recall, 2 or 3 years ago from the chamber, and at a meeting with council, that'd be an appropriate corner for that way for a sign of some kind. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Michelle. The diagrams that you provided in our package, are we talking eventually 4 different installations?
No, this picture is just showing different angles of the same sign. In my
Okay.
report, I talked about future installations. Those locations have not been identified at this time, but the same
Okay.
concept would apply throughout the village.
All right, thank you. No further questions, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Piper.
Your worship, just through you to staff, I'm wondering, I know it fits with our design standards. Just wondering, did we consider any other design? It just seems to, and I know it's hard in a drawing, but it seems a little large to be plunked down there in what I assume is a gathering space and will be more of a gathering space once the new building is up. Was a different design considered, I guess is my question.
Michelle?
No, other designs weren't considered. We specifically collaborated on this to keep it in line with the village standards and the signage plan that we have. But these renderings are not to scale, so they will be much smaller than they're shown here. In the aerial view, you can see how small the footprint would actually be. And the signage itself just is taking up a little bit more space than it will in reality.
Yeah, for me, it seems like it's, I'm wondering if it could be, it just seems to be right in the flow of foot traffic, you know? So that's why I'm kind of hanging up on that, but no further questions, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, thank you. Again, with the sign, I mean, it's a fairly large sign. It's 6 foot by 4. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct. And how high will it be off the ground? I mean, I've got concerns that if we have any young children running along, they're going to try and run under the sign and whack their heads, or anyone with a guide dog. Guide dogs don't tend to look up, they tend to look straight. They might wander under the sign, forcing the person with vision impairment to walk into one of the uprights. So I'd like to know, if we are going to put it in, can we make sure that it goes straight to the ground, that there's no gap underneath? That way it'll probably make it easier for the village staff to do any cleaning around it. But I'm concerned that we were supposed to be declutterizing the village centre and the Esplanade and putting more signs in. I mean, if you're at the hotel, there's only one way you can really walk, and that's down Esplanade. So I'm not really fond of this design or the application of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, like I mentioned to earlier on, Councillor Palmer, that this was an area that was discussed several times by the Chamber and Tourism Harrison. That location, actually, I believe it's a better location where this one is showing. I think the original one they discussed was going to be right where that blue fence tarps is. That's the area they were talking at the time. The corner, right on the corner there, so it's even. Of course, the sidewalk will be much wider than what it is there, because that fencing they've got now is over part of our sidewalk, and part of the sidewalk has to be replaced with the tiles that they removed as well. So that will be wider there. I know it looks narrow at the moment. Any other questions on the before I call the question on the recommendation? No. So I'll call the question on the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Hooper. Motion passes. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to the next report. This is from the financial officer regarding the 2020 annual report.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. The 2020 annual report is presented for approval by Council. Section 98 of the Community Charter requires that an annual report be prepared by June 30th each year and made available to the public at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting. The annual report was made available for public inspection on May 17, 2021. Section 99 of the Community Charter requires that council must consider the report at a meeting held at least 14 days after the report is made available for public inspection. The recommendation is that the 2020 annual report be approved. Thank you.
So do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Any discussion? You want me to go around the table, or Councillor Hooper first?
Yeah, I noticed on the goals, on the infrastructure and utilities, you've got the goal for 2021 as to renovate and expand the boat launch building. We agreed that back in last year, and I think there was a sum of 200,000 towards that. Is that correct?
That's correct. The boat launch upgrade project.
Yeah, and the development of the graphical information system, the GIS. I understand that we paid CTQ back in 2018 on the 5th of May, $9,000 to collect the data and to do training for the staff. Is that correct also?
CAO has a comment.
There's been a lot of data collection done by CTQs in collaboration with the development of the asset management plan. I think most of that was paid for by a grant, but yes, CTQ's done a lot of the preparatory work.
So all it is have we got any of our GIS system up and running at the moment?
CAO.
No, there's some very rudimentary information available on the FVRD's platform that they are hosting on our behalf. And right now we're in discussions with the FVRD to see whether we could expand that platform to host the more detailed information, mostly to do with utilities, so that it would be very usable at a staff level. So
Yeah.
we're waiting for them to get back to us on that.
I asked the question, but by the time this becomes up and running, the information that CTQ supplied us will be 4 to 5 years out of date. We've got the complete engineering for the upgrade for lift station 1. Now, I mean, we had a cost of that of well over $1 million. So will that, are we still going to go ahead with that?
It's what is in the budget, yes.
Right. And the last thing, if we, it's got the new street lighting on Chehalis. Now, wasn't that part of the 77 lamp column light replacements we were doing?
Ms. Jones.
No, I don't believe it was part of that program.
It was that, so we missed that off that program.
I'm unsure, to be quite honest, Councillor Hooper, as to whether that was is additional lighting or not. It would probably be a question better for the operations manager, who's not here this evening.
Oh, right. And we've got on the recreation, culture and tourism side, we've got upgrade the lagoon area with a new bream and patio. Now, will that come to council before we start doing work on this? But as I understand it, when we had the meeting regarding the lagoon master plan, the new breams, I take it, is another footpath to go around the lagoon, and that was controversial with some of the members here. And the patio being placed outside the washrooms was also a little bit iffy. So will that come to council before any work proceeds on that?
Ms. Joe or the CAO wants to have this one.
Your Worship, what's reflected in the 2021 goals related to the upgrade lagoon area with the new berm and patio are projects that were previously approved by council based on the lagoon master plan.
Yeah, the problem I've got with that is that we when we voted on the lagoon upgrade thing, it wasn't actually each item wasn't voted on individually, and you either voted for the lagoon upgrades or you voted against it. So I'd like to see any lagoon upgrades and walkways come back to council before there's any work started.
Correct me if I'm wrong, did this not go to an open house? And was there not a survey done for the public to put in their input on what they would like to have seen around that area? Michelle?
That's correct. There was a public consultation done around the lagoon master plan development, and the berm and walkway was part of that.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors?
Yes, on the development cost charges, do I take it our closing balance is 4,774,000? Is that what we've got in the reserves for that?
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Hooper's referring to page 137 of the
Yes, that's correct.
financials, note number 9. A balance of $4,747,153 was the closing balance at 2020 for the development cost charges. There were sewer DCCs for 1.744161, water DCCs for 1.501729, drainage DCCs for 957,510, and parks DCCs for 543,753.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
That's correct. Also on the 5-year plan, we've got on page 124, we've got expenses for development planning, and you budgeted for just under $500,000. Could you explain why development planning is liable to be an expense to us?
Ms. Jones?
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm just getting to the page that Councillor Hooper's referring to. Sorry, could you just identify again what the question was, please?
It's under expenses, it's development planning.
Yes.
And on the 2021 budget, we've got it down as 487,300. Now, development planning, how is that an expense to us? If you could let me know what expense it's going to be to us.
Yes, I'll just pass that over to the COO right now.
Certainly. Thank you, Tracy. And through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Hooper. Land use planning is one of the primary functions of local government. We spend a lot of time on this particular issue. You see it at the council table on a regular basis. You'll notice that the budget is larger in 2021 than it is in subsequent years, and that's, I believe, mostly because we've set aside funds to do the OCP.
Right, because I refer back to the previous year's 5 years financial plan, where we had 313,000 to that, and we budgeted for 2021 122,700. So if you can understand why I'm a bit confused that some figures keep repeating themselves, like in the 2022 budget, it's the same virtually as what we budgeted for this year in the previous 5-year financial plan.
There is a comment.
Yes, that's exactly what I was referring to with respect to the OCP. We had originally budgeted for it probably in 2020, and we are pushing that sort of extraordinary expense forward because it was deferred due to COVID.
Right. That's all, thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Palmer, sorry.
I'm sorry. The report, I understand, needed 14 days to be available to the public before we could vote on it, and I understand there's been more than 14 days. My question quite simply was, did the village receive any comments or any feedback from any of the residents about the report?
The corporate officer has a comment on that.
No, Your Worship, through you, the village, to my knowledge, did not receive any comments.
Thank you.
AO has a comment.
I do believe we received requests for copies of the annual report, but no feedback came from that. People were just interested.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from councillors? Mr. Councillor Vidal?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to put out a thank you to our staff for the preparation of an excellent annual report that really is highlighting the successes during a pretty challenging 2020. In spite of COVID, we continue to experience some pretty good achievements during those challenges, which caused all of our residents, businesses, staff, and council to constantly adapt and for lack of a better word, pivot as public health orders were implemented. I'm really pleased to see in the report that our village continues to remain in an excellent financial position, and that is a huge thank you to our financial officer and our CAO. And I'm looking forward to hopefully the easing of some restrictions this year, and as a village we can continue to move forward with some exciting projects that have been identified in the report. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any Councillor Piper, do you have any comments?
I did have a question, but Councillor Palmer asked it, and I will just echo Councillor Vidal's compliments to staff. It's very aesthetically pleasing to read, and it's a nice, easy read. So congrats back to staff for a job well done. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'd like to thank our financial officer. Of course, the highlight of this report, as I look at it, is the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting, which is a great tribute to our community and our staff. When I look at the infrastructure, transportation, recreation and culture, environment, sustainability, fairness and fiscal responsibility, you know, the people of this community should be very proud how things are being handled here, and how all the projects that have gone forward to maintain the village in a well-running order. And I'm very, as the mayor, I'm very proud of that, and also of the type of reports. So when I think back when I first came on council, what an annual report looked like, it was 2 pieces of paper. But now, you know, it's something that people can look at. It's very simple to read, and it gives a real good outline of how the community runs. And again, thank you to Ms. Jones and the staff for a job well done. That being said, I will now call the question. All in favour that the 2020 annual report be approved. Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Oh, sorry, we've had a mover and a seconder. Anybody opposed? Nobody. Councillor Hooper's opposed to the annual report. Motion passes. Thank you. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to the next report. That's also from the Community Services Manager. and that's from public, or pardon me, public events on municipal property.
Michelle?
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 25th, the province released a revised restart plan and provincial health order. According to this plan, gatherings such as weddings, funerals, performances, and festivals with COVID-19 safety plans in place will be allowed throughout the province. The following limits will apply under the provincial health order. Beginning May 25th, they opened it up to outdoor seated gatherings up to 50 people and indoor seated gatherings up to 10 people. Beginning June 15th, we expect that indoor seated gatherings of up to 50 people will be allowed as long as they are physically distanced. And beginning on July 1st, increased capacity at both indoor and outdoor organized gatherings. And the PHO does state that fairs and festivals will be able to operate, but at this time, the province has not provided a definition of fairs and festivals under the provincial health order. At this time, we do not have a facility to accommodate indoor gatherings. The maximum capacity of council chambers at the village office to meet the WorkSafe COVID-19 safety plan requirements is 8 people, necessitating the continued use of Memorial Hall for council meetings. The village will now begin accepting applications for outdoor gatherings and events that can comply with provincial health order requirements. Staff's recommendation is that the public events on municipal property report be received for information. Thank you.
And this here for receipt. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Vidal, seconded by Councillor Piper. Discussion will start with Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Worship. There's not much to say. I mean, we're bound by the PHOs, so as things continue to improve, I'm looking forward to getting back to normal. So thank you, Worship.
Right on. Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
To the community service manager, when do we foresee opening up Memorial Hall to a public gallery for council meetings? Has that been discussed?
Michelle? The CEO is going to come in on this one.
Yes, this relates to the meeting that the mayor and I attended on Friday afternoon with Minister Osborne. They expect to follow up with some guidance around council meetings in the near future. So until then, we're still operating under the existing guidance, which is to exclude the public. But as soon as we have an update, we can let you know. The real constraint is around physical distancing, because that can put a cap on capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper. Do you have any comments on this?
Only one. When will the village office be open to the members of the public?
CEO has a comment on this.
Yes, I believe we sent out notification with the tax notices that we were preparing to reopen the office to ensure ease of tax payment. Was that June 21st, Tracy? But we're waiting to see what the information will be coming out of the June 15th announcement. And if that is a positive indication to reopen, then we would reopen, I suppose, the 16th. And I anticipate that that's what will happen.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to pose the same inquiry that Councillor Palmer did. So our CAO has answered that question. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the recommendation, I'll call the question. All in favor? Everybody in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to number 13 under bylaws. The first bylaw that we have this evening is the Development Procedures Amendment Bylaw. This matter was before council at a committee of the whole meeting on May 28th, 2021, and was approved by council. I just wanted to give some clarifications on the sections 210 and 211 that were consolidated. However, I regret to advise that at that meeting, the staff report inadvertently did not reflect this change. So I've highlighted it here, what that what that provision states. All other changes were administrative in nature, and sections of the bylaw have been renumbered accordingly. However, the intent of the bylaw remains intact as it was presented. Having said that, the recommendation this evening is that the Development Procedures Amendment Bylaw number 1160, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
Chair for 3 readings. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Questions, we'll start with Councillor Hooper.
Yes, I remember the discussion on this. I've said all I was going to say on this, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to our corporate officer to thank you for bringing this forward with the clarification. It did cause some confusion to me during the lengthy discussion we had last council meeting on it. But I'm happy to see the clarification, and I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piper.
No further comment, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. Yeah, I had asked at that time about the 211 and 210. I had noticed, and I appreciate the corporate officer going back to that. That's actually why I voted, one of the reasons I voted against accepting the minutes of the committee of the whole, because what we approved actually had that error in it. So I'm not sure the impact of approving something with an error in it. Now we're creating it as a bylaw. I'm going to vote against this today, though, and I just wanted to explain why. Because at the committee of the whole, I had proposed a motion to put in a provision that matters that are not other than development permits would go to the advisory planning committee unless council directed otherwise. So there would be a default of going to that, and I understand that I was putting forward my motion and I know it failed, so I will not do it again today. I already know the wish of council on this, and as a result I voted against this. I think it was the only person who voted against this last time, and I will do so again today because I think we're missing an excellent opportunity to give a role to the advisory planning committee. And I know it was discussed at the time that there are many committees we can send it to, and that is one of them. But the only thing is we don't. And so we have used that advisory planning committee very little. I would rather have it in there as I'd proposed, so that unless we decided otherwise, it would go to the advisory planning committee. We can at least have their input when we make the decisions, and then that committee would actually have the role that I think it was intended for. So most of the changes are housekeeping. I don't have a major problem with the changes made. I just think we're missing a major opportunity to correct what I would say is an oversight in it. So as a result, I'll be voting against it today. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the recommendation, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed. Councillor Palmer and Councillor Hooper, motion passes. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to the next bylaw, and this is amendment to the Highway and Traffic Bylaw number 974, 2011. At a committee of the whole of council in January of this year, a motion was passed to change the pay parking fee. So accordingly, the fee schedule that is contained in the Highway and Traffic Bylaw, it's necessary that we amend that schedule in the bylaw. The amendment bylaw is here for council's consideration. Recommendation this evening is that Highway Traffic Amendment Bylaw number 1165, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
Recommendation is a remover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Hooper, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion, we'll start with Councillor Piper.
No comments, pretty straightforward. Thank you for staff bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
No questions.
Thank you, Councillor Vidal.
No questions, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm supportive of this. I think it's great. I only have one small little concern, and that is we've been collecting these monies for the last month and we're just enacting it now. Is that going to cause some complications? And that question is, I guess, to the corporate officer, that we're actually, this is the first time we've actually authorized that fee level. Although we did pass a motion earlier to increase the fees. I do understand that. Is it a problem?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Palmer, I don't see it as a problem, as it is a housekeeping matter, and it just took a little longer than normal.
Okay.
Motion was passed by council. This is just a housekeeping matter and addressing it in the bylaw.
Thank you. No other questions? So I'll call on the recommendation. I'll call the question now. All in favor? Everybody in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Next order of business, please.
Yes, your worship, the next bylaw that I have for council's consideration is the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy bylaw. This is to introduce a new bylaw. I'll give you a little bit of background. In 2019 and 2020, the village has received numerous requests for records under the FOI Act, and the practice is that the administration and processing of these requests have been completed by the designated Freedom of Information and Privacy Coordinator. In reviewing the bylaw, it's come to our attention that the current bylaw that was adopted in 1995 requires updating. Bylaw number 638, which is the current bylaw, designates the Information Privacy Committee, consisting of the mayor, coordinator, and deputy mayor to be the head. It also authorizes the coordinator to perform all duties and functions except for what's listed in Appendix 1. As administration of the FOI Act is currently a duty designated to the coordinator and is being performed by the coordinator, it is recommended that all provisions be administered by the coordinator. The Local Government Management Association FOI Toolkit Best Practices recommends that a staff member, rather than an elected official, be designated as head to be responsible for interpreting and administering the Act. Staff members are trained and have the expertise to handle these matters. It was also noted that in Appendix A to the bylaw had some provisions in it that were legislated under the Act. However, some of those provisions were inconsistent with the current provisions under the Act. In addition, provisions will be updated as digital media and audio cassettes are obsolete. Section 75(1) of the Act provides for the public body to charge fees for services. However, it is recommended that the fees reflect the maximum allowable fees that are stipulated in the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy regulations. Accordingly, staff is recommending that a new bylaw be adopted and the old bylaw be repealed. The recommendation this evening is that Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy bylaw number 1166/2021 be given first, second, and third reading.
So the bylaw is here for first, second, third reading, moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion, Councillor Palmer.
Just one question, really. So I went through this and I looked at the Freedom of Information Act because I've actually have to refer to it reasonably often. And so this makes good sense to me. Before we had a bylaw that kind of ran a little parallel to it. Now we're basically getting out of the bylaw business, just basically designating a couple of the definitions to fit into the provincial act, which makes perfect sense to me. The only small concern I have is that the staff recommendation is to repeal and to place this new motion, this new bylaw 1166, which is great to me. It's just the motion itself that is in the package doesn't say repeal. So that's the only thing that I think is missing. I think we're about to create a new bylaw without repealing the last one, unless we view that that's automatic, and I don't think it is. So I think the motion should have been that the previous bylaw be repealed and that this bylaw number 1 be given for a second and third reading. That's
Corporate officer's got a hand up to answer that. Hang on, Councillor.
Yes, through you, your worship, to Councillor Palmer. In the new bylaw, there is a provision in the new bylaw that actually repeals the bylaw. So if you look on page 184, that old bylaw will be repealed upon adoption of the new bylaw.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, your worship. Through you to our corporate officer, just a couple of questions. Have we seen in 2019 and 2020 an increase in requests for FOIPs?
Yes, your worship, through you to Councillor Vidal. There has been, since 2019, there's been a substantial increase in the requests. I would guesstimate those requests to be as frequent as once every 2 weeks, or at least 4 or 5 times per month. I have quite a stack.
Okay. And it's also to a corporate officer. I mean, I just have, you know, some level of concern of the time commitment that our corporate officer puts into freedom of information requests. And if I read the bylaw correctly, it also permits our CAO to process some of these, or at least assist in the process of some of these if necessary. Is that correct?
So we'll let the corporate officer answer that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council Vidal. The actual definition of the head means the person's designated under Section 4, which means the CAO and the corporate officer are the head under the Act. However, the actual coordinator is the designated person that administers and processes those applications.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And just one other question. I'm just wondering if there has, even in the previous bylaw, if any provisions were ever made to waive a fee or lower a fee if people who were requesting the FOI weren't in a financial position to be able to pay the fees?
Corporate officer?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Vidal. There is a remedy for that if, in fact, a request was processed and in a process, if hypothetical, if it took 3-4 hours to search for a record, under the schedule of maximum fees, the first 3 hours are free. So the charge comes about after that 3-hour period. The applicant also, if they've been charged a fee for photocopies, their remedy would be to, and it's under the Act, they can request that fee be waived, and that would go to the OIPC's office of the Privacy Commission. Okay.
All right, thank you. Nothing further, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the corporate officer, not to put you on the spot, but I'm just thinking from a layperson's perspective, hearing that there could be up to 4 FOI requests in a month. Could you ballpark, I know each request would be unique upon itself, but we're talking several hours, correct?
Ms. Keith?
Yes, that's correct. Depending on the circumstance, depending on the record requested, whether the record's been archived, each request is, individual. I couldn't really give you an estimate per se.
Yeah, for any publics listening, I just wanted to, some may take the number 4 that was expressed earlier as not too many, but it's a lot of very detailed work that takes place. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there. Sorry for putting you on the spot. I know it's hard to kind of ballpark when each request is unique. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, thank you. I mean, our bylaw is to reflect part of the Community Charter of 1996, sections 1 to 7, which says the purpose of this act is to make public bodies more accountable to the public and protect personal privacy. I know freedom of information that requests can take a time, but it is the law and we have to go by it. The one thing that really concerns me is that we are, under our new proposal, we are doing away with any oversight of that of the deputy, of the mayor, the coordinator or deputy mayor, which means anyone that has their freedom of information requests refused has to go through a long-winded process. Will the corporate office, will there be any provisions that if someone's refused the Freedom of Information Act, that it will come to council to actually determine whether it is correct? Because there's no oversight over the, I hate to say it, over the CAO or the deputy CAO onto what is acceptable and what's not. I know it's covered in the Act, but the Act can be pretty loose in places. So for that reason, with this doing away with any elected officials administering part of this or just overseeing part of this, I have to vote against it. Thank you.
The corporate officer, you have a comment? Nothing? CAO?
I could just briefly offer a comment on that. There is quite rigorous oversight on these type of requests, and it's provided by the Office of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Commissioner.
And that's what happens. And I see no reason that we're not legislated or we're not have the experience to spend the amount of hours and research, which we know nothing about, but we're not in that position. That's required when there's a freedom of information that comes forward. That's why there's a delegated person to do this. And I can assure you that our corporate officer, sometimes you can't see her face in her office with the amount of files that she has there. I mean, it's the research that takes the time on this before anything is done. And everybody in this community that has put a file in is being treated very respectfully and very well by the corporate officer. So any other questions from council? None. I'll call the question on the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Hooper. Thank you. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 14, questions from the public pertaining to agenda items only.
Are there any questions from the public this evening pertaining to the agenda items only? Thank you.
We do have one user with the raised hand.
Oh, hi, am I on? Hello?
Hello, good evening. Yes, you're on now.
Yeah, this is, okay, this is Rav Guman, and thanks for taking my question. My question goes to Councillor Hooper. Councillor Hooper, you opposed the financial report, and I was just wondering if you can maybe give a reason or what part of the report that doesn't sit well with you, that causes you to oppose it?
Do you have a
Certainly,
comment? Do you have a comment on that, Councillor Hooper?
yes, certainly. It's that a lot of the items have already been agreed and money attributed to from last year. Part of the Lagoon Master Plan, when it come to council, it listed a number of items. Now, you either had to agree to all items or oppose all items. And I don't think that's fair. To put a new beam or walkway around the lagoon, to make another walkway will take up space and time. To be quite honest, it seems that it's a way of circumnavigating some of our complaints and concerns. There are some other items within there as on the development expenses. I'll cut myself short on it because I've got a number here. Budget surplus, is that the full budget surplus, or does that include the DCCs? On classification of expense and by object, there's we're over budget there by nearly 700,000. Oh, no, we're under budget by 700,000 on that one, but we're more than
that sounds better.
Yeah. So there's a great number of small items which raise concerns to me that I feel we need more discussion on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you still there, sir?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, that there was a public process when we did the master plan for the lagoon areas. It was an open house. I believe there was over 60 people that were there, besides other areas that were discussed that evening. But that was one of the major areas, and there was a survey that was put out to the public to get their input so council could make up the decisions. And that was that came back, the surveys from the people as well. And I should point out that during the course of the year, council does have several budget meetings where councillors have the opportunity to bring up the questions in regards to any part of the budget that needs clarification. So that's it's a process that's it's a lengthy process, and of course you also have the open house for the budget meeting where the public have the opportunity to come in and ask all the relevant questions regarding the budget, which is your money, and that also happens every year. That's been mandated that we have that. But again, thank you for your question. Is there anything else, sir?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on the line?
Yes, we have Mr. John Allen.
Good evening. Hello.
We can hear you.
Not answering.
Oh.
Hello, Mr. Allen.
Oh, we can't hear him.
Unmute yourself. Hello. Give him another few seconds. Mr. Allen? Well,
We
he's
do have-
having technical problems.
We do have another question. Maybe we could come back to Mr. Allen. We do have another question. Maybe we could come back to Mr. Allen.
The line, yes. And
We have Chantel Lemire.
good evening. Ms. Meyer? Hello? Chantel Meyer, are you on? Unmute yourself. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now, yes.
Thank you so much. I actually have two questions. I'll start with one and perhaps we can go back to Mr. Allen in between. So my first question was, I could not read the fine print on the wayfinding sign images in the package. And so I'm just wondering if these signs include some form of acknowledgement of the First Nations communities who have longstanding relationships with the land and waters that the village occupies and the places to which these signs will be pointing.
The wayfinding signage right now is a concept under development, and I can pass that comment on to the other partners in this project.
Thank you so much. And
Second question?
oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. So I think maybe my question might be for Councillor Palmer, but I'm not 100% sure. So aside from the committee of the whole, the only other committee or commission that's listed as, quote, standing on the village website was the Advisory Planning Commission, which it appears was established in 2012. And I'm new to the community, so I'm just wondering if someone can tell me a little bit more about what that commission does and sort of on what sorts of things the commission may have advised on, maybe just in the last few years, just to give me an example of how what that commission its like purposes for.
Yes, it's basically, oh, do you want to directing this to Councillor Palmer? Okay.
Well, I'll let the mayor answer the question. I think it obviously is to give us advice on matters of variances, rezonings, etc. And I guess the position I was making earlier, we're not using it. So there have been, since I've been on council for 2.5 years, I think we have had, I think once that I recall, the committee make a recommendation, and it may be a second time, but definitely it hasn't been used that much. And I'm of the view that it should be. Obviously, just because it comes with a recommendation doesn't mean that council has to follow it. But I think that it's important that the APC does operate to get community involvement. So it is to be on land use matters. Now, if you take a look in terms of the development, you know, it doesn't have a fit where we actually, there's no automatic trigger, and I'm trying to have a trigger so that in certain circumstances, it does get brought into the process automatically by staff, because once it comes to council, quite often we're far enough in the process that we want to move forward rather than send it back. In terms of actual times that it's come forward in the last several years, I can only speak of my memory in the last 2.5 years. So perhaps Mayor Fascio or the Chief Administrative Officer would give you a more accurate answer on that.
Thank you.
Yes, on the before I give it to the corporate administrative officer, it's basically the APC, as you appreciate, is an advisory committee. They in some cases, council, normally if it's a subdivision application, a land issue, if it goes to first reading, normally after first reading, before we get to public hearings, it can go to the Advisory Planning Commission for them to review it, to see what their thoughts are on that. It's there are other cases, if a development comes before the council and it complies fully with the OCP and our zoning, that it's not necessary to go to the Advisory Planning Commission. But there are circumstances where it can be advised to them, but the corporate officer may have some more input on that.
Thank you.
Your worship, if I may, this is Madeline McDonald, the CAO. I just wanted to give just a short little technical answer to the question. The Advisory Planning Committee, which you'll hear us abbreviate to the APC, is a standing committee of council, which is appointed by council and is under the auspices of the APC bylaw.
Thank you.
Does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you again for your questions. Now back to, is Mr. Allen back on again?
Yes.
I hope so. Hello?
Hello, you're
Hello?
on now. Yes,
I'm on
we
the
can hear
phone.
you now. We can hear you
Why,
now.
thank you. Okay, I shall speak then. Good evening. This is John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. I have a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor. The annual report used to be by statute held as a special meeting of council, which is much like a shareholders report of a corporation,
Done it.
and that isn't happening anymore. Has the law changed that so that you no longer have to hold a special annual report shareholders meeting and can just incorporate it as an agenda item in a regular meeting? Has that statute changed?
I'm just going to pass you over to the CAO.
Well, I've only been a CAO for 20-some years, so in my time as a CAO, it has never been under the legislation in the way in which you describe. But the legislation has always required us to prepare the report in advance of June 30th, make it available to the public for a period of at least 2 weeks before it goes to council.
Well, perhaps it was advice from Victoria that said it should be a special meeting, more open, with less limitation on questions and comments from the public, and that simply isn't happening anymore. It used to happen that way in Harrison, but it doesn't anymore, and that's my concern. I don't think that the public has got enough opportunity to question council about their policies, their issues, or their plans, and that was one of our few opportunities to do so.
Yeah, I believe at the last council meeting, was it the last one that the one before we had you allow questions from the public?
There's been questions from the public with respect to the budgeting process, most of which is incorporated. The information that came out of those decisions of council is incorporated into the annual report. But as I stated earlier, the annual report has been available for the public for over 2 weeks now.
There we go.
All right. I'm still not happy, but let me ask you a question then about this new sign that's going to go up for people coming out of the hotel to block their view of the Esplanade, not Esplanade Avenue, but the Esplanade. In our zoning bylaw, we require that there be no visual obstructions within 25 feet or 7 meters of the corner of the intersection of two streets. This sign that you're proposing is going to create a very dangerous blind spot because people coming along the Esplanade westwards towards the hotel who will be turning onto St. Alice Street will no longer be able to see the pedestrians on the sidewalk up ahead or the people on the crosswalk at the entrance to St. Alice Street. So I think that from a traffic safety perspective, this sign and its location is very ill-advised and is certainly, it may not contravene the letter of the zoning bylaw about removing obstructions at visual obstructions at intersections, but it certainly is going to create a blind spot, which I think will be exposing the village to liability and perhaps exposing the public to the danger of being run over by somebody turning left into St. Alice Street. So I'd like council to reconsider that from a sightline perspective. Any traffic engineer or the Ministry of Highways will, I think, advise you not to do that.
Thank you.
I'm to that. The development process that has been outlined in your new process, and I appreciate for once Councillor Palmer raising a very valid point about the APC. I believe that they should all resign now because they'll be basically have been sidelined by this particular process you're bringing in. But it raised the point about the Board of Variance. I understood that variances to the zoning bylaw regulations were only permissible in cases of hardship. But recently we had council considering a massive increase in density, in height, in site coverage and everything else for the bungalow motel site. And that was put forward to council as a variance, contrary to all the laws that say you can't vary those things by a variance. They're not a variance, they're a whole new zoning. And I'm wondering, what happened to the Harrison Hot Springs Board of Variance and why isn't there one? And why is that not incorporated into that development procedure that you have outlined here tonight? Other municipalities, including the Fraser Valley Regional District, who recently advertised for members locally, have a Board of Variance. And I believe that that was an actual requirement, a statutory requirement, but I don't see it mentioned, and I want to ask why.
Yeah, that I can recall that. I was on that myself when I first came to this country and Harrison, that I was on the Board of Variance in Harrison. And I believe you were the mayor before that, and it's gone through till right now that we've never had a Board of Variance since the probably late 70s. And I remember having the meeting in the old information center. So since then, there's been no Board of Variances in the village. You're quite right. The regional district is looking at establishing one.
Well, my question then is, are we required to have a Board of Variance? And if we're required to have a Board of Variance, why don't
we're not required to have a Board of Variance.
It's optional then.
Yes.
So did we dissolve the Board of Variance or cancel a bylaw in order to get rid of it, or what happened there?
Well, Mr. Allen, I would ask you that question because you were the mayor, and there was other mayors that followed you, so I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that I didn't scrap any Board of Variance.
Well, there are other mayors that followed you, so maybe they did.
Okay, well, perhaps you can find the answer and let us know about that.
Well, I don't. I won't worry about that. Anyway,
well, it's a valid question, Mr. Mayor, and I think I'm entitled to an answer to the question.
Yeah, so, I'm just giving you the answer. As far as we're aware, there is no regulation for a Board of Variance.
Okay.
And if applications come before council, it is in our package here. If applications come before council, council can refer the application to any agency, organization, or government body for their comments and recommendations.
Okay, I know that part. I'm just wondering why we don't have a Board of Variance. My last question, Mr. Mayor, you'll be delighted to hear it's my last one. I'm quite confused and concerned about this talk about a new berm. I don't agree that there was valid or sufficient public consultation on this, but this sounds, as far as I can tell, and it's not easy to tell what's going on here, this is going to be a whole new dike that's going to wrap around the playground and the public washrooms on the beach and create a new dike outside the existing dike. So if that is the case, has this been approved by the Fraser Valley Diking Authority, who regulates these dikes, and has it been approved by the Ministry of Lands, who actually owns the beach area, which we have some kind of a tenure on which to operate? And has it been approved by DFO, who also has concerns about the habitat and environmental protection in that area? It sounds like $1 million worth of money that's being unnecessarily spent because we built those washrooms below flood level deliberately to keep them out of the line of sight of people on the esplanade, and we built them in such a way that they could flood every few years and be cleaned up afterwards. So there's no actual need for a new dike outside the washrooms. The washrooms were built to go underwater once every 5 or 10 years at a very high water and to be hosed out afterwards and put back into service. So
Before I hand this over to the CEO for explanation, Mr. Allen, I can assure you that I was on the same council that brought the washrooms to fruition. We actually got when we got $65,000 towards those washrooms as a grant. There was never ever any mention that they were allowed to be flooded and then be cleaned out afterwards. So where that,
that's why we put all the electricity up high.
And excuse me, I'm speaking.
Carry on.
I'm speaking. There was never any discussion on that, because I can recall you at the time saying there should be marble tops and marble floors and everything else in that washroom when we were discussing how we were going to finish it. Now I'll pass it over to the CEO to give you some comments on your on the questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Allen, I can speak to some of that. The various elements of this project have come before council on a number of occasions, and one of the most recent was with respect to a grant application through one of the new tourism initiatives under COVID, and we've recently been approved for some funding for this project under that, which will leverage our RMI funding, which is very helpful. So once we knew the funding was in place, we're able to proceed with the environmental approval stage of it, which is where we're at right now. So in answer to your question about other governmental approvals, that work is underway right now. And the other thing I should just mention is, no, this is not part of the Harrison Dike. It's not meant to supplant the Harrison Dike or be part of the provincial diking system. But this is in part an answer to a recommendation that was made when we had a beach safety audit undertaken. And we were given direction to provide a better barrier between the lagoon and the playground area during high water events. So this design took those recommendations into account.
Wouldn't it be much simpler and cheaper just to close the playground for a couple of weeks at high water, instead of spending $1 million on a whole new dike?
Yeah. Well, thanks for your questions, Mr. Allen. Is there anybody else on the questions?
There's no other hands up, Your Worship.
Councillor Palmer.
Just for clarification, Your Worship, sometimes questions are asked and the main purpose of the question is to make a statement. There was a statement made that I just think should be corrected because I find false narratives in Harrison to be quite disturbing. The bungalow variances have never been entertained by council. That was part of the question that was asked earlier about us entertaining those variances. We have not, as a council, had a discussion about those variances. They've not been entertained. The matter was going to come on and got moved, so it has yet to happen. So referring to it, how we've entertained variances, just seems to me to create what I view as a very false narrative. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor, for clarifying that. You're absolutely correct. Any other questions from nobody out there?
There are no further questions.
Call for the motion to adjourn. Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Piper. All in favour? Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your input. Thanks you to the public who are here. Questions this evening, and thank you to staff. Have a good week.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.